Hi, friends. We'll just have one story time this week. Next week, we'll probably have more, but just one for this week because we read part of chapter 2 on Sunday, and this weekend in both services, we will read from sort of the end of chapter 2 into chapter 3, and then we're going to jump ahead. The following Sunday, we'll take a look at chapter 12, so we'll have some ground to cover next week. But for today, we're going to pick up in verse 11 of chapter 2. Now, you'll remember on Sunday we read about the birth of Moses, the story that probably you've heard many times of baby Moses being put in the basket and sent down the river and intercepted by the princess. And when we left Moses, he was old enough to be weaned and sent to live with the princess in Pharaoh's house. And we don't really know anything more about his upbringing. The next time we hear from him, which is what we're going to read right now, he is a grown man. So we're going to pick up chapter 2, verse 11. Please read along with me. One day after Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and saw their forced labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his kinsfolk. Okay, so let's stop right there. First thing to notice is that, Moses is living in this in between cultures, right? He ethnically is a Hebrew, but he was raised in Pharaoh's household, so he probably inhabits this liminal space between Hebrew and Egyptian identity. But when the story is told here of this situation that we didn't get too far into because I stopped us, notice that Moses is identified with the people who are enslaved, with the Hebrews, despite having been raised in Pharaoh's house. So he understands himself to be a Hebrew. Those are his people, okay? So he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his kinsfolk. Verse 12. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. When he went out the next day, he saw two Hebrews fighting, and he said to the one who was in the wrong, "Why do you strike your fellow Hebrew?" He answered, "Who made you a ruler and judge over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "Surely the thing is known." When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. Okay, so Moses one day sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, and he's overcome with anger, and he kills the Egyptian and buries him in the sand. And he looked this way and that way and thought he was in the clear, thought nobody knew. But then the next day he sees two Hebrews fighting each other. And, I'm sure he's trying to appeal to look, you guys have enough going against you. Don't fight with each other. And that is when the Hebrew he's addressing reveals that people know he killed this Egyptian. And so Moses realizes that this word has gotten out. And in fact, the last verse we just read, verse 15, Pharaoh learned of this, that this one who was raised in his home has killed an Egyptian. And then Pharaoh sought to kill Moses. Okay, so this is the situation that causes Moses to flee. He's going to leave Egypt. All right, the second part of verse 15. But Moses fled from Pharaoh. He settled in the land of Midian and sat down by a well. The priest of Midian had 7 daughters. They came to draw water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. But some shepherds came and drove them away. Moses got up and came to their defense and watered their flock. When they returned to their father Reuel, he said, "How is it that you have come back so soon today?" And they said, "An Egyptian helped us against the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock." Okay, so let's stop there. So Moses, we see this scene back in Egypt where injustice just burns him up so much that he's mad enough to commit murder, right? And then he flees Egypt, and the first place that he comes is Midian, where he sits at a well, and there's another injustice before him. Now, this one doesn't make him murderous, but he stands up for these 7 daughters who apparently have so much trouble getting water from the well daily that their father is surprised at how quickly they return on this day when Moses intervenes on their behalf. And their father's like, "How are you back so soon?" And the reason they're back is because Moses stood up for them and didn't allow the shepherds to drive these women away. So they were able to get the water that they needed. And notice that when these daughters tell their father the story, how they see Moses. They said, an Egyptian helped us. So Moses understands himself to be part of the Hebrew people still, despite being raised in the palace. But these daughters see him as an Egyptian. So we've got this open question of like, what is his identity? Where does he fit? Who does he belong to? Where are his loyalties? Where should his loyalties be? So these are open questions at this point in the narrative. Okay. Verse 19, they said, an Egyptian helped us against the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock. He said to his daughters, where is he? Why did you leave the man? Invite him to break bread. So the father is showing gratitude here for what Moses did. Moses agreed to stay with the man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah in marriage. She bore a son, and he named him Gershom, for he said, I have been an alien residing in a foreign land. All right, so we're going to stop there in our reading, but I want to again lift up this parallel between Moses and Joseph. We looked at Joseph the last couple of weeks, and Joseph was sent away by those closest to him to live in Egypt as a slave. And now Moses has been driven away, also by one he would have been, at least physically close to, living in his house. Whether he had a relationship with Pharaoh or not, we don't know. But the princess brought him into Pharaoh's house, and then Pharaoh is the one that, it's a fear of Pharaoh that drives him away from his people. So he is driven out of Egypt, separated from his people, just like Joseph was separated from his family. And in both of these instances, this separation also positions them to deliver their family in one way or the other. Of course, Joseph delivered his family by being positioned to grant them access to food during the famine. Moses is going to be sent back to Egypt by God, and we are going to talk about that this weekend in worship, both services. I hope that you will make plans to join us.